Lisa, the email I sent you about Vern Straisman. Do you guys know anything about his working life, hobbies, and stuff like
He was a plumber by trade.
that?
Amazing to watch him climb a ladder with his big rig. He was also big in
Good afternoon to members of council and welcome to the special meeting of council. This is an emergency electronic meeting of the town of Petawawa for July, the 13th, 2020. I've called the meeting to order and I'll ask those who are with us if they would observe a moment of silent reflection in whatever way is comfortable for them. Thank you. You have a copy of the agenda. I need approval of the agenda, please. The motion, over the seconder, Councillor Roots, Councillor Carmody. All in favor? It's carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any member wish to disclose any pecuniary interest on any of the matters before us today? Having seen none, you have a copy of the minutes of the June 22nd council meeting, a special meeting of council. Any errors or omissions to the minutes is distributed. See none, then I need a motion to approve the minutes, please. Councillor Sabran, seconded by Councillor McLean. All in favor? It's carried. No presentations. Go on to bylaws. The first bylaw is bylaw 134820, a bylaw to amend bylaw 127619, a bylaw to authorize a land use agreement with the County of Renfrew to twin the Algonquin Trail to the Four Seasons Bridge. Need a motion for first and second reading, please. Deputy Mayor Service, seconded by Councillor Sabran. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried.
Bylaw 134820, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 127619, being a bylaw to authorize a land use agreement with the municipal corporation of the County of Renfrew. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 134820.
Thank you. I'll go to third reading of bylaw 134820. I need a motion to move and second the third reading, please. Councillor Sabran, Councillor Carmody. Any discussion? Councillor Sabran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question in regards to with the extension, does that come with any additional costs that will be levied towards the town or any additional costs to improve that, or are we not quite there yet? Thank you.
Costs in what regard?
Just in terms of any kind of maintenance or anything that's going to need to be done in the near future, is it all ready in terms of the trail?
It's all paid from Portage Road to the Four Seasons Bridge. That there will be ongoing maintenance throughout the winter for the whole portion that's bypassing the Algonquin Trail, but no additional costs as a result of this. Further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried.
Bylaw 134820, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 127619, being a bylaw to authorize a land use agreement with the municipal corporation of the County of Renfrew. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 134820.
We'll go on to the agenda. There's no correspondence, and we'll go on then to a whole host of minutes. The first is the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board meeting on February the 6th and April the 29th. I need a motion to accept these minutes, please. Councillor Mullins, and second by Councillor Roots. I'll turn this over to Councillor Mullins.
Okay, I've reported on these previously, but I'll just quickly update. On the February 6th meeting was the election of officers for chair and vice chair. That never changed. So Steve Bennett is still the chair and I'm still the vice chair. And we were informed at that meeting that our insurance premiums were increasing substantially as a result of numerous claims for fire damage that we had last year. So we have taken that into consideration with the new budget. The April 29th meeting, we had the audit report presented to us, was accepted, and we had a surplus of $333,539.33, which we put into vehicle and rolling stock reserve temporarily. This will go towards the upgrades that we're currently in the process of doing for the landfill gas project. So, and I will get onto that whenever I get into my councillor report a little bit later on. But other than that, that's the highlights of the two meetings. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Questions? Councillor Carmody. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. Just a question for Councillor Moens regarding the surplus. So there was 300 plus surplus for this year. What's the cumulative position? Have there traditionally been surpluses?
Not normally, but last year we had a good year. We have had surpluses normally, and we would normally put that either to capital expenditures or I think at one time we were probably going to turn it back into the municipalities, but we found that it was just as easy to hang on to it, put it into a reserve, and use it for future capital projects. In this case, that money will go towards the upgrades of the gasification project, which we're working on. And I will actually give you that information if you want to hang on when I give you my council report. We just completed a tender process, which came in at about $500,000. So this money will go towards offsetting that project.
Okay, but so as far as a cumulative surplus, and you guys pretty much spend your surplus as you go and maybe keep a little bit for emergencies or whatever?
We have a working fund, which we keep up to $200,000 every year. So we always make sure that that's up to speed. And then from there on, we put the money into our capital reserves. We always have projects that we're looking at for the future, and we're always looking for funding. So whenever we have a surplus, we apply it to one of those capital projects.
Great, thank you.
Other questions of the sitting members? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote on the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Thank you. Pembroke and Area Airport Commission meeting February the 20th. I need a mover and seconder to accept the minutes, please. Councillor Root, seconded by Councillor Moens. Councillor Moens, did you wish to speak to this this set of minutes? Pardon me.
I think these are pretty well self-explanatory. We had the audit presented, and that was accepted and passed. I don't see anything else. That we had some money that, of course, that we had allocated. We put that into a reserve for the project runway, which was just money that was accumulated through payment from numerous people into an account, which we now transferred over to a restricted account. The election of officers remains the same as we had before. The chair, vice chair, and executive committee remains the same. I think that's pretty well it. If there's any questions, Councillor Roots and I will be willing to try to address any of the concerns.
Thank you. Questions of the two members? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Petawawa Public Library Board, 24th of February, 15th of March, and the 19th of May. I need a motion, please, to accept these series of minutes, please. Councillor Carmody, seconded by Deputy Mayor Service. Deputy Mayor Service, do you wish to speak to these, or?
Yeah. Okay, so it's been a different couple of months there in light of the fact that we were closed for a few months. Before we closed, though, we did write up a new policy for disposal of library property so that it's more in line with what the town is doing. In terms of phase 2, it's been going really well. The libraries, our little pickup window at the back door of the Rotary Room has been very busy. And because we can't offer children's programming, they've been putting together children's programming packages. And each time they put these out, they're sold out all the time. So that's been going well. In light of Doug Ford's moving to phase 3 there on Friday, the library is going to do this in coordination with the Civic Center. So whenever the Civic Center makes the move to the next stage, the library will we'll do so in concert with the Civic Center. But other than that, we were quite happy to keep all of the employees on payroll, even though the library was closed, and they were kept very busy working from home and doing necessary tasks. Otherwise, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to ask them or answer them.
Questions of the Deputy Mayor? Having seen none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Thank you. Police Services Board of February the 26th. I need a motion. Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Roots. Councillor Carmody. Do you wish to
Thank you,
speak?
Mayor Sweet. So the minutes before you are from our February 26th meeting, which was the last one we had prior to the outbreak of the pandemic. And it was fairly business as usual at that point. A couple of resolutions, some information regarding our community safety and well-being plans, and you'll see an item there about the OAPSB spring conference, which was to be held in Toronto this year, and that was obviously canceled. And the detachment commander's report, nothing unusual there. One thing of interest, though, that one of the PSB members, Maria Moreno Church, asked a question of the inspector regarding the proceeds of crime policing grants that are available. Now, sometimes people wonder what happens to all this money that the police confiscate, or, you know, assets that the police confiscate that are related to crime. And there is funding available through the government that comes from these funds. So if you have community projects that are safety related, you can apply for consideration for funding for your project through the Proceeds of Crime Fund, which is certainly something that we could consider going forward. But other than that, there was nothing unusual. We've had a couple of Zoom meetings, or at least one Zoom meeting, possibly two, Don? Two Zoom meetings so far, and another scheduled for this week. Happy to entertain any questions.
Questions of the Chair of the Police Services Board. Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carmody, under item number 10A with the inspector's Neufeld report for that data entry error, is there more information there in regards to the billing issue?
10A, the data entry error. Oh, regarding 911 hangups?
Yes. So the calls, it looked, from what I understand, is the calls that from the garrison are being invoiced to us here at the town.
Yeah, that was an issue, and I believe that has been resolved. Don, refresh my memory. What was the nature of the discussion there that we had again?
It wasn't just in the town of Petawawa. It was some other municipalities that had a military base as well, where they were getting charged their billing. I know they were working on it to have it separate, because the municipality shouldn't be paying for those calls for service to a military base. So we don't have the final answer yet. It's still being worked on.
Yeah, that's right. It's up in the air. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully there's a chance, an opportunity to get some funds back then. Thank you.
So, Councillor Carmody, are you going to take a look? You mentioned some funding that might be available. Are you going to take a look at some sort of program and get back to us on that? And how much?
Yeah, well, It's certainly something that we'll consider at our meeting coming up on Wednesday.
Okay. that's
Basically,
good.
the way it works is you need to have some project in place that is eligible for the funding from a proceeds of crime grant.
Sure. No,
And-
I understand that. It's just that we don't want to lose any opportunities. There may be funding out there. If it's a safety-related issue, we're always conscious of doing what is necessary to keep our communities safe.
And my understanding is this is not a grant application that has a start and end deadline. It's always there because proceeds of crime money is always being accumulated. So it's
Sure. Understood. Well, I think you'll keep us in the loop as that goes along.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. The Petawawa Business Advisory Network on March the 10th and May the 12th. I need a motion to accept these minutes, please. Councillor Sabran, seconded by Councillor McLean. Councillor Sabran, you wish to speak to these?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as you can see by the March minutes, there were a lot of activities and a lot of different events planned. Unfortunately, due to COVID, those had to be either canceled, postponed, or rescheduled. And we do have a meeting tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll get another update as to where that stands. The May meeting was virtually again dedicated to discussion with respect to the impacts of COVID-19 on businesses. And Christine had provided us with a very lengthy and detailed chronology of just what has been happening that impacts the entire province. So that was very, very helpful. Also, she provided and has been providing a list of government business supports to our business community, as well as developing initiatives to support local business, to get information to and from them so that they can make good decisions. Because certainly what the businesses have been reporting is that no one shoe fits all, that this COVID has impacted large businesses, small businesses, and very much in different ways from one another. So it certainly has been a challenging time. But like I said, tomorrow we have a meeting, and so we will be able to learn more. And of course, with the announcement with respect to stage 3, we'll see how that plays out for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Have you any comments of the success or what of the 12 days contest? Can you speak to that?
Actually, I thank you. I know a lot of folks use social media to get the word out, and I certainly saw it from my feed. I don't know who the winners were, and perhaps I just missed that, but I know we'll be filled in tomorrow, and I can certainly report on that next time. But I know there was a lot of chatter about it in the community for sure.
Yeah, I think it was very well received, a very innovative initiative to try and help businesses in our community. So hats off to the P-Band for coming up with that, and to Christine Mitchell, our Economic Development Officer, in particular. Very innovative initiative. So if you, I won't be at that meeting, but can you pass my thanks to the P-Band group for the initiatives that they've brought forward to help businesses during this COVID-19. It's been very fruitful for the business. Thank you for that. Questions of these two reports? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. Thank you. Staff reports. Blue box transition to full producer responsibilities. Staff reports. Who's speaking to this? David? David Unraw, are you online?
Yep.
Okay, David, I think it's your report.
Yes. So there's lots of information in the report, so I don't want to go over line by line, but would certainly entertain any questions. In summary, as of the Waste Diversion Transition Act, they moving towards that the full producer is responsible for the cost of recycling the certain items within the blue box. So AMO has been leading the discussions with this, and laid out consultation with the various parties, and one of the requests was that when would certain municipalities want to transition into this program, and really they were given the three windows, being 2023, 2024, or 2025. And so each municipality was supposed to take that information back and take a look at, say, any assets that might be affected by the transitions, any existing contracts, and how this might affect the overall delivery of service to the municipality. So as we are in a joint contract with City of Pembroke and the Township of Laurentian Valley, we wanted to make sure that all three municipalities were in step. So we had some initial meetings in January and February with the three municipalities and the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center, plus our contractor, Miller Waste Services, just to make sure that we totally understood what this transition meant for each of the stakeholders, and any additional costs. And so the recommendation that you have in front of you is to send this report, but also that we would transition in the last phase of the transitions. And it really is based on getting out of our existing contract. Our existing contract doesn't expire until 2025. And so, if we wanted to transition, say, in 2023 or 2024, there was substantial cost to us to get out of that contract. Some of that cost would be made up of or reimbursed, I guess, by the producers taking over the program and us not having to pay. But there certainly was a huge cost that, and also was felt between the three different municipalities that we're not sure exactly how this transitioning is going to occur. And so I certainly didn't want to be one of the first municipalities in this transitioning. And so that's why we've recommended, and it's consistent between the three municipalities, that we transition in 2025. And then it all should be noted that this is strictly our opinion going forward. If council wants to move that we accept that and send that to AMO, but then AMO could come back, or the other organizations that are deciding this, and they could come back and say, well, you have to transition 2023. So this is just our wish to transition in 25, but we could be ordered to be transitioning in another period of time. So I'd open up to any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moults.
David, I'm a little uptight about this one. It says a blue box transition. Is that strictly blue box, or is it all of the recycling? First of all.
No, it's not all the recycling, and that's the problem. It's not all the recycling. So we, the town, and the other municipalities would certainly have to have other aspects of the program that we currently run that would still be in operation. So in essence, there could be that vision of two systems in place, and definitely not ideal. And the other thing that this doesn't address, it doesn't address any of the commercial or ICI, or I believe some of the multi-residential. So it's strictly for like your single family home dwellings or duplexes and that. So there's going to be, again, another sector there that we'll have to address, that we currently service, but would not be addressed in this program. And we have no control over that because that's by the government, how it's been laid out.
I have a concern because at our last meeting, we heard previously the tire recycling business, they took over that portion themselves. And it started out great with about 20 companies that would take recycled tires. Now it's down to 4. And now the last time we applied for somebody to come and pick up tires at the Waste Recovery Center, out of the 4, only 1 responded. And they said that they can't come for a couple months. Meanwhile, we've got over 1,000 tires sitting at the landfill site, which we can't get rid of now. So this is my concern, that the other manufacturers are going to fall into the same trap, because as soon as it's not financially feasible for them, they walk away from it and leave us with the mess again.
Mm-hmm.
And it also means, what are we doing at the Waste Recovery Center as far as the recycling facility is concerned? I mean, we're sitting there, we know nothing of what's happening.
I think, sorry, David, did you want to respond?
Oh, well, I was just going to say I don't have a response for that, because that's through the province in regards to the mandate. But yeah, certainly, you know, they're looking at setting up super MRFs. I've heard the terminology where all the stuff would go to, you know, 3 or 4 facilities within Ontario. But yeah, there's certainly that aspect that it could set up a monopoly.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm in the same position as Councillor Moens is concerned. This was on the agenda when I sat on the AMO board about 8 or 10 years ago, and here we are today. They're now getting to the point where it's going to be full producer responsibility, but only on certain items, from what I can see. This, I think it's important, because part of the report says this is for information purposes only, and is no way legally binding. I think there's a way too many unanswered questions on this particular situation, and I think Councillor Moens has articulated some of them. We don't know even where the waste, or pardon me, the blue box will even end up. We have no idea at this point in time. This is just a support, as I get it, David, in principle, but it's not going to bind us in any way, because I would be extremely nervous having to ask for a motion when we don't have all of the full information going forward with this. I understand that the province doesn't move, and industry on this hasn't moved very quickly on this, but I think Councillor Moens has pointed out one area, and that is tires, that we're going to be fully compensated for by the producers, and it would appear as though that perhaps isn't going to be the case. So I'm a little nervous about this one. I think we have to be very vigilant here, hurry slowly on this, and I do understand the 2025 situation that you're referring to, because it'll give some time for everyone to really take a look at this and have a long, hard look at some of the minefields that this particular legislation may entail. So I'm certainly in Councillor Moen's corner as far as this is concerned. However, it's up to council if they want to show support to AMO on this particular situation. You've heard the report. Are there any further questions on this going forward before I ask for a mover and a seconder, if you're comfortable to pass this resolution? Councillor Moens.
Well, as far as the motion is concerned, I don't think we have much choice in the matter. I'm glad that we're going to probably take the last exit, if you want to call it that, and wait until, give us at least a couple more years to see if something else happens, and see if other communities try something that maybe will help us out, because there's certainly an unknown out there at this point in time.
I don't disagree with
But
you
I think
there.
we still have to, go along with what the motion says that's presented to us.
Okay. And if you're comfortable with this, I need that. Did you want to ask a question, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know, make a statement, I guess. I'm a little apprehensive when it says full producer responsibility, but there's not a lot of specifics offered to us on what full producer responsibility means. And these producers are entities that are concerned about making profit. And it just, I'm apprehensive in that this seems to be a project that's going to cost municipalities more money. And we're being asked to make decisions based on very little knowledge. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, that's why I say it's in principle only, and it's an information item, and it's not legally binding. We have to understand, we have to keep our finger on the pulse on this one. There's only one pocket in the province of Ontario, and one taxpayer, and that's us. And so we have to be very conscious of what's taking place here. So I too have reservations about the future of this particular situation, but if it has to move forward, we have to support AMO, who represents 442 municipalities. And as I said, all of the questions that will be asked and have been brought up here have been asked at one time or another at AMO. Certainly when I was on the board, all of the questions that were referred to here and beyond have been asked. So it has taken a long while to get to where we are today, but I think even though it's a little bit gray in terms of where we're going, I think we have to support AMO going forward with this, with the understanding that it's not binding in the sense that that it's not a legal agreement, it's an information item at this point in time. So I'm open for Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. I'd be in favor of supporting the motion as well and concur with everything that you've said about AMO. Individually, we haven't got the resources required to look into all the details regarding such a complex matter as this. And there are definitely loose ends and the legislation that will undoubtedly have regulations attached to it that won't fully be known until some point in the future. And we have to move forward based on and as you say, support AMO's recommendation, because they're the ones who have the resources to really look or to do the deep dive into this, to use the modern cliche.
Sure. Okay. So it's moved by Councillor Carmody. If someone willing to second that. Councillor Roots. Any further discussion? Having seen none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Oh. I'm looking for recommended. Okay, the other one is that Council adopts the resolution attached to this report as presented, and that resolution be forwarded to AMO and MECP. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor McLean, Councillor Mones. Discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed if any? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to CEO 05-2020. The Council resumes its regular meeting schedule in August as follows. Just simply, I'll hand this over to the CEO and he'll explain the situation to you, given what has transpired and where we are today going forward. I know there's a little bit of tiredness around this whole COVID situation, and anytime I talk to you, there's a feeling that you all want to get back to a regular council meeting, and I get that. So there's fatigue around COVID-19. However, I have to congratulate not only the CEO but staff here before we go into this particular situation for steering the ship during these difficult times. It hasn't been easy, and I can attest to the workload that has gone into to keeping the municipality afloat while we're going through this. But thank you to all that have made this possible. I'll hand this over to the CEO. It is his report. CEO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It certainly has been unprecedented time for sure. The report you have before you, CAO 5/2020, was crafted about 3 or 4 times last week until Don and I decided we were just going to have to stop and put a bow on it based on what we knew at that particular moment. The bottom line, I think, as the mayor has indicated, is that council does wish to resume some sort of a normal schedule, and I think from the staff's perspective, we would appreciate that as well. Appreciating as well that we've been able to meet virtually over the course of the last number of months, and appreciating that we've adjusted the time as well, which has been fantastic too. So, but yeah, I think the time has come to move back to normal business at our anointed hour, at least for the time being. The provincial declaration of emergency is slated to expire on Wednesday. As we understand, that is likely to be extended until the 24th of July. Within that time frame, it's also expected that the provincial government will have the new legislation called Reopening Ontario, a Flexible Response to COVID-19 Act 2020. There will be time in there for the province to actually have that endorsed, and that will replace the declaration, the emergency declaration, but it will allow the province some flexibility with respect to emergency orders, which currently are in play until the 22nd of July. Obviously, we're not out of the woods yet, as it were, and so the province is making those moves to ensure that they've got the flexibility to move should we have a second wave or should something turn. So as we wrote this report last week, we anticipated that it would be back to business at the beginning of August with council's indulgence, and that we would be meeting in person. Again, the province opened up this new act, and in this new act, we will be actually able to amend our procedural bylaw to allow for permanent meetings virtually if council so decides. So while we are proposing that schedule return on the 4th of August and that we look to meet in person, there is going to be the ability, pending the passage of this legislation, that we could continue on meeting in a virtual fashion. And so we will have to have some conversation over the course of the next couple of weeks before we determine how that meeting on the 4th will actually roll out if council wishes to resume that schedule. And obviously, if we're going to go virtually, we'll have to have the procedural amendments, our procedural bylaw amendments introduced during that meeting. I think one of the things that we will have to consider with respect to in-person versus virtual is just the numbers of people that are permitted to be present in a setting. Obviously, up until today, we understood that 10 was the limit. There is some question as to whether that applies to municipal government since we are an essential service. However, saying that, we understand as of midnight Friday, the Premier has announced that number of 10 for a social gathering, which I would also argue this may or may not be a social gathering, that number will go to 50. Obviously, we could not accommodate 50 people in this chambers, understanding that we still have to have physical distancing in place. And I know generally, as council is aware, we don't have that kind of attendance at these meetings, but we may have a few items that a few more of the public may wish to attend. So if we do go back to that in-person setting, at least while the restrictions are still at play, we will make arrangements to relocate council meetings to the hall in the Civic Center, which obviously is accessible, and we will have ample notice to allow for people to attend. So I guess the bottom line in all this is that things continue to change at breakneck speed. And I think from our perspective, though, we're looking to get back onto the normal schedule in August. And as it stands right now, that could be in person or that could be virtually. But I think what we'd like is council's permission to move back into some semblance of normalcy as of the beginning of August. And pending no changes between now and that period of time, we seem to be addressing these things on the fly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Before I ask for a mover and a seconder, I'll open it up for questions or comments with regards to the CEO's report. Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. So clearly there will be some issues, as you pointed out, with the capacity of our council chambers. And even if we have, you know, the hall at the Civic Center to work with, there could still be some issues with running the meeting, or how effective the meeting would be if you had people spread out all over the hall. Has there been any consideration given to a hybrid format, like some kind of combination of maybe having all the councillors in the chambers with using technology somehow that you know, our tech experts could supply to, you know, accommodate delegations or something of that nature? Has that been considered, or is that a possibility at all?
CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Carmody, for that question. It's one thing that we've managed to not have to deal with leading up to this point, but our Director of Planning and Development is now going to need to adhere to the timing provisions in the Planning Act for any of her applications. So I will tell you at this point in time that she will be advertising for zoning bylaw amendment public meetings in mid-August. If we are unable to facilitate that in an in-person fashion, then we will have to do it virtually, and we would not be the first municipality to do that. So I think with the assistance of our consultants at Combitech, as well as some guidance from our neighboring municipalities, we would be able to facilitate that public meeting where the public would be able to participate through the same format under which we're operating today. There are other items where we may not require the public meeting, but we could have requests for delegation, which of course we have not had over the course of the last number of months. So again, there will be a possibility. We wouldn't be breaking new ground here. It's been broken already. However, obviously that will be up to council to decide if they wish to move to that. And of course, it's pending the passage of this legislation that's before the province over the course of the next number of weeks.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. Dan, whether it's phase 2 and 10 people or stage 3 and 50 people, has the government ever put out any kind of regulation concerning the square footage of the room or facility and the maximum number of people allowed in that square footage?
Maybe. I can tell you that in this particular office or in this particular council chambers, according to fire department regulations, I could have 109 people or whatever, but we would have to take out a tape measure and figure out just how many could actually fit in here, observing the 6-foot distance. I'm sure the mayor will want to make a comment about the requirement of face masks tomorrow, but the donning of face masks in Renfrew County under the guidance of our health unit does not eliminate the need for physical distancing. So we certainly couldn't handle 50 people within this office or within these council chambers. Again, whether that's applicable to us or not is also in question because we are an essential service. But there may be requirements out there. Obviously, in a church, you're only allowed to have 30% capacity. There are other requirements, I think, that were just introduced today with respect to bars and restaurants and that sort of thing. So probably Christine could answer all of those things with respect to our business community, but with respect to the municipal office and the municipal council chambers, we'd be looking at making sure that we could maintain that physical distancing of 6 feet. I will say that if there was no public interest and we had no one else here, that the council chambers has already been pulled apart, if you will, and you will be when you return back to whatever normal business is. You will all be kept 6 feet apart, at least, and maybe that's a good thing. And certainly Dawn and I will also be separated as well. So we could manage without a doubt, but it is the big question becomes the public, and obviously we don't have the luxury of turning anyone away at the door if they're here for the public meeting.
Thanks.
Other comments or questions? Okay, you see the recommendation that council resume its regular meeting schedule in August, and you have a series of dates there. If you're comfortable with this, I need a mover and a seconder to accept this, to go back to a regular meeting schedule. And as the CEO has said, hopefully it could be in person, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how this all evolves. It is moving, as Dan has alluded to. We're wearing masks tomorrow, but bars and stuff like that are open on Friday. It's a different scenario, but all the rules will be in place. It's a difficult situation, and it's very difficult to keep up to this with some sort of clarity going forward. However, the sense I get is that council would like to get back to its normal schedule starting on August the 4th. Hopefully we can do that in person, but as the CEO has alluded to, it all depends on what's on the agenda, because we are constrained at this point in time, at the moment, for 10. Now it could move to 20 or it could move to 50 indoor. We're not quite sure, but at the moment it is the request in front of you is to go back to our regular schedule starting in August. If you're comfortable with that, I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Roots and Councillor Mones. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Thank you. With that, we'll go to councillor reports. Deputy Mayor.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Where are we? Okay, Councillor McLean. Councillor report.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carmody.
Nothing to report at this time.
Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to report that on Sunday, July 26th, the Ottawa Biplanes Adventures will be at the Petawawa and area airport. And they're doing adventure rides. And if any of our streamers, viewers that want to take a part in that, it's $98 per person. If you're a frontline worker, it's a 35% discount. The event runs 9 till 5, and you can call 613-316-7229 to book your appointment. And it'd be nice to get up and fly over a great town. Thank you.
Can you explain to me how many people are in the plane at any one time?
I believe there is 2, the pilot and yourself. I'm just looking at a picture, and the distance there is 6 feet.
That's a plane with 4 wings on it, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. Further report. Councillor Sabran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report.
Thank you. Okay, on my part, I've had 4 county council meetings. Pardon, did I miss one, councillor? Tom, sorry. Pardon me. Sorry, Tom. I thought I'd gone around the whole table. Councillor Mones, pardon me.
Normally, I don't have anything to report, but at this point, I do have something to report.
This is an important one. Yes, I understand. Sorry about that.
Actually, it's kind of good news. So
yes,
at a time like this, I'm really anxious to give you some good news.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Good news from Councillor Mones. Here we go.
So anyway, we had a meeting on June the 25th at the Waste Recovery Center, and it was on site with social distancing. But one of the big topics was the projected costs for Perpetual care to look after the facility after it was closed. And in 2009, the consultants had done a review at which they had estimated it was going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $40-some million over the course of time to maintain the facility to meet standards. However, last year we decided to spend $5,000 to our consultants and have it updated because it hadn't been done for so long. Because over the course of time, we had implemented a lot of changes on the site. For example, I just name a couple. We put in the leachate treatment system, put in a landfill gas system. We started to implement unsorted contaminated load fees, which cut down on contamination. We planted poplar trees to eat up some of the different gases and materials that were leaching into the system. So after a period of time, we actually had actual data that we could look at. So as it turned out, we got the new report back, and the perpetual care was actually reduced by 49 years and will only be required for 33 years after closure. Based on that assumption of a 1% inflation rate, the board approved the recommendation to no longer contribute $200,000 a year into our post-closure cost reserve. Because at one time we needed about 40-some million dollars in a reserve. So now, as it turns out, we only need just over $4 million. And we currently have in the neighborhood of 2.1 or 2.2 in our reserve, which is invested. So based on the interest rates and the investments and so on and so forth, we have enough money in our reserve now to cover us off in 33 years for post-closure costs. So the good news is that we no longer have to contribute $200,000 a year to the post-closure costs. Now, we will keep an eye on this, and over the course of time, in a few more years, we'll review it again to make sure we're still on target. But this is pretty good news right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going forward, I'll get into what Councillor Carmody had discussed previously. We currently have to upgrade our landfill gas system, because as a landfill expands, we have to expand the gas wells in order to be able to collect the gas. So the project for this year was going to be in the total of around $450,000 to $460,000. We just got the tender back, and we opened them up, and we came in at $457,766. So we're just about $4,000 over the budget. Now, going back to the $330-some thousand that we had put into the surplus we had from last year, which we now put into the reserve, we can pull that back out. It offsets that, plus the $200,000 we don't have to put into the perpetual care. We now have the money to complete the gas project without having to come back to council for more money, which we had in our budget, put some money in to cover off the costs if required. So now we will not have to draw down on that money. But I would strongly recommend that that money then go into our reserve for the waste recovery center, because in a couple of years we're going to have to do the leachate gas expansion. So we will have a jump on that one. We'll have some money in our reserve to go towards that. And as the mayor and I had discussed, in 2 more years, the debenture payments on the facility will have ceased. So it will be another couple $100,000. No, I think it's up to 400-some thousand, almost 500,000 that we're putting into debenture costs. We'll be able to go towards the leachate management upgrade, sorry. So I think all in all, financially, we're looking not too bad at the Waste Recovery Center. The only issue we have is we don't know the future of the actual facilities from a recycling point of view. But there's nothing we can do about it. We have to just wait this one out. And the third topic, and I think I discussed this one with Dave, on June the 24th, they received a contaminated load in the green bin with motor oil, wood waste, and concrete. This becomes a concern because of the risk of the oil contaminating all the materials, not only inside the building as well as damaging our equipment as the concrete went through the shredder. So anyway, we narrowed it down. We know it came from Petawawa. We know what area it came down, and Dave has done some legwork, and we know the area that it came from, and sent out some notices and looked at some other options of trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But that's not what the green bin was meant for. So that was my report on the Waste Recovery Center.
Seth, thank you for that. Yeah, I don't think you should understate the work that has been done at the Waste Recovery Center. We were way ahead of the curve when we put that in there 25 years or 23 years ago. And I think it's been one of the best investments the town, at that time the village, ever got involved with. And it has been carefully managed over the years. And people like yourself and those who have sat on the board, Councillor Moens, have done a stellar job of moving the yardsticks. That's why it gets very, it's when I look at the way that the province wants to move ahead on the blue box, we've got a very stable environment there with the Waste Recovery Center, and I would not like to see that being adversely affected by something like that. However, this is all good news. The financial implications that you're bringing forward and the closing costs of the landfill site, that's good news for the partners and for the board that worked tirelessly to make that a reality. So congratulations to the board. It's hard to imagine that it was 22 years ago that process was put in place, and now we're coming to the end of the road as far as the benchers are concerned. But hey, give yourselves all a pat on the back for doing an outstanding job of managing that waste recycling center. It's an excellent facility and something that we should all be very, very proud of. And the amount of refuse that has been redirected. I remember way back when we had 2 years capacity left in the landfill site when we went into that particular situation, and the C of A was expanded for additional 40 years as the result of the blue box and the organics and the fiber that was going through the situation. So we extended the life of the waste, the landfill site, as I say, by 40 years, but it has been managed exceptionally well. And any time that we can prove to our taxpayers that the value for the money is there, I think this is a good example of dedication on the part of the board. So thank you to you and to the board and all the people who have gone before you as far as that board is concerned. Job well done.
Thank you.
Any questions of that particular initiative? I think it's great news. Thank you for that. And I apologize once again for missing you. When I was around the screen here, I jumped over you because my screen is different than everybody else's. I apologize for that. Any comments to Councillor Moens? No? Okay. Then I'll go to myself. I've had 4 meetings with the county, 1 county council meeting, all Zoom. I've also had 3 other meetings, 2 with Minister John Yakubuski and Minister Steve Clark on the provincial policy statement and OP25. I think it's fair to say that we've made tremendous progress with these 2 government ministers, and we're moving the yardsticks forward to get in place a provincial policy statement, or pardon me, an OP that makes sense to us here in Renfrew County. I was very surprised. At the last meeting, I did not know what to expect, but the province came back and we had a very good meeting with Minister Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and our MPP, John Yakubuski. So we're moving ahead with some of the issues that we brought forward, and I'll keep you abreast of those going forward as more information becomes available. I was involved with a Zoom meeting with the Premier of the province, and the CEO talked about that. The Premier talked about the COVID Economic Recovery Act, and we'll keep monitoring that because there are some things in there that may have some concern for us. The CEO talked about permanently putting in place, if we so choose, virtual meetings. I don't think that's what you particularly want, but we'll get the full regulations when they are available. There are some changes to the framework for development charges and the parkland dedication and things like that. It's a whole bunch of things in this particular act. Another good meeting that we had with the Premier and also in attendance was Minister Stephen Clark. I did attend the virtual again, the change of command for Colonel Lapointe to Colonel Vass, and said congratulations both to the colonels, to one who's leaving and going to Alaska as a brigadier general, and I welcomed Colonel Vass in and look forward to working on behalf of council with that gentleman. Face masks, it's all over the place at this point in time, but starting tomorrow, face masks will be mandatory in all public places. Just to make everyone aware of that. 6 foot social distancing is still in place, the hand washing, but more importantly, the masks are going to be in place. If we want to kill this pandemic, we have to adhere to the experts, and this is a little bit more severe than what has been advocated at the province, but that is the right of the Renfrew County District Health Unit to do that. And we listen to them, and it has certainly worked for us here in Renfrew County. I think you'll all agree. We're one of the lowest exposure rates in the province of Ontario. So job well done to the county, and in particular to the town of Petawawa for staying the course and keeping their foot on the gas. I know it has been a very difficult time. I know we're tired of it. I talked about COVID fatigue. We're all tired of not being able to go out and do what we normally do, but we're going to get back to normal. Stage 3 has been announced by the Premier, effective on Friday, I believe. We'll know more about that later as the rules and the regulations roll out. But we're moving ahead, and I think we should be very proud of the community as a whole for the work that they've done and staying the course. So stay safe, everybody out there who's listening or watching. With that, that's all I have to talk to you about. I need a confirming bylaw. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Sabrin, Councillor Carmody, all in favor? It's carried.
Bylaw 134920 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its special emergency electronic meeting held on July 13th, 2020. This constitutes first, second, third reading short of bylaw 134920. So
the last piece of business is the adjournment of what I hope will be our last virtual meeting. Hopefully it will be. We'll just have to wait and see, because I know we all want to get together and have a little chat, social distancing and all that sort of stuff as well. But I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting, please. No, you want to stay? Okay. Councillor Moen, seconded by Councillor Roots. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everybody.